Jerusalem, August 26, 2025. Against a backdrop of deepening war and growing public discontent, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered one of his most defiant statements to date. Speaking after a late-night cabinet meeting, his words carried both urgency and finality. "We have just come from a cabinet meeting. I don't think I can elaborate too much, but I will say one thing. It started in Gaza and it will end in Gaza. We will not leave those monsters there. We will free all our hostages. We will ensure that Gaza will no longer constitute a threat to Israel." The Prime Minister's words came after Israel's Security Cabinet convened in Jerusalem. The meeting was shrouded in secrecy, but its tone was unmistakable. A promise of total confrontation with Hamas and a rejection of any premature ceasefire. While Netanyahu was speaking inside, outside, on the streets of Tel Aviv, thousands of demonstrators demanded something very different: an end to the fighting and an urgent agreement to return Israeli hostages still trapped in Gaza. The war that started in Gaza, as Netanyahu put it, has now stretched far beyond its borders. Months of bombardment have left swathes of Gaza in ruins, displacing hundreds of thousands and sparking international condemnation. Casualty figures climb daily, with aid organizations warning of famine and collapse. For Israel, the cost is measured not only in military casualties, but in the enduring trauma of hostage families waiting anxiously for word of their loved ones. Netanyahu's phrase, "It started in Gaza and it will end in Gaza," has already begun to circulate as a defining line of his wartime leadership. Supporters argue it reflects determination, a refusal to leave Hamas intact. Critics, however, fear it signals an open-ended campaign with no clear exit strategy. The Prime Minister's additional vow, "We will free all our hostages," is both a promise and a political gamble. For many families, patience is running thin. Just hours before Netanyahu spoke, Tel Aviv's central square erupted with chants, placards and candlelight vigils. Families of hostages marched alongside peace activists, calling on the government to strike a deal before more lives are lost. Protesters accuse Netanyahu of dragging the war on to salvage his political fortunes. They say the cabinet's hardline approach ignores the desperate human cost. Abroad, Netanyahu's declaration was met with mixed responses. Washington reiterated its support for Israel's right to defend itself, but quietly urged restraint in negotiations. European leaders, many of whom face growing domestic protests over the Gaza war, called for de-escalation. Meanwhile, Arab capitals condemned the statement as proof that Israel seeks not peace but domination. The fate of hostages remains the most sensitive and emotional aspect of the conflict. Netanyahu's insistence on freeing all of them is ambitious. Some Israeli officials privately admit it may require compromises he has so far resisted. Hamas, for its part, has dangled the possibility of exchanges, but insists on conditions that Israel has repeatedly rejected. Inside Israel, Netanyahu's words were as much about politics as security. His coalition government, dominated by right-wing and ultra-religious factions, demands nothing less than a decisive military victory. Any hint of concession could fracture his fragile hold on power. For opposition leaders, the statement was reckless. They warn that promising to end the conflict in Gaza is a fantasy that risks locking Israel into perpetual war. Beyond the rhetoric, the human toll continues to mount. In Gaza, UN officials warn of one of the worst humanitarian crises in decades. In Israel, citizens brace for rocket fire, military funerals, and economic strain. The contrast between Netanyahu's unwavering declaration and the chants from Tel Aviv's protest squares underscores the divide between a government seeking total victory and a society longing for closure. Netanyahu's phrase echoes past Israeli wartime rhetoric. From the 1973 Yom Kippur War to the 2006 Lebanon conflict, leaders have often promised decisive outcomes, yet history has rarely provided clean endings. Wars leave scars, ceasefires fray, and new threats emerge. By declaring it will end in Gaza, Netanyahu risks setting expectations that reality may not meet. What comes next remains uncertain. Israel's military campaign continues, international mediators push for prisoner exchanges, and public anger swells. For Netanyahu, the stakes are existential, not only for Israel's security, but for his own political survival. As night fell over Jerusalem, the Prime Minister's words lingered. It started in Gaza and it will end in Gaza. For some, they are a rallying cry. For others, a dangerous illusion. What is clear is that the war shows no sign of ending soon, and the pressure from protesters in Tel Aviv to diplomats abroad is only intensifying.